We all know UFC fighters are tough, but when it came to Nate Diaz, he wasn't just tough, he was ruthless, brutal. Nate didn't just walk into the cage like it was a sport. He walked in like it was a street fight.
Diaz gets the move. My God, he's got the back. That's it. He's got the chain. Diaz. He's done it. He is all over.
That wasn't showmanship. That was real, unfiltered anger. Nate never faked beef. He didn't play nice with the media. And if he had a problem with you, it usually didn't end well.
I'm gonna fight your fucking ass. You know what's the real fight? What's the real money fight is me, not these clowns that you already punked at the press conference. Don't no one want to see that. You know you beat them already. That's the easy fight.
The ones who found themselves on the wrong side of Nate's fury were often the fighters he genuinely hated. So who are the top 5 fighters Nate Diaz hated the most? Let's kick things off with Donald Cowboy Cerrone. The feud between Nate Diaz and Donald Cowboy Cerrone wasn't just another UFC matchup. It was heated, emotional, and deeply personal from the start. Interestingly, before things got ugly, Cerrone had a lot of respect for the Diaz brothers. He even admitted he was a fan of both Nate and Nick, admiring their fighting style and raw attitude.
I was a fan of him, you know, like him and his brother, they fucking bring it, man. They show up, when it's time to fight, it's time to fight. And it's truly them, you know, and I respect that from the guy, you know. Like I said, I wanted to meet him.
But all that respect went out the window after one incident at a UFC gym event. Cerrone tried to be friendly, reaching out to shake Nate's hand. Instead of accepting it, Diaz slapped his hand away and called him a name. Cerrone took that as pure disrespect. It stuck with him, and it made him see Diaz in a different light. In his eyes, Nate had crossed the line. But Diaz saw it differently. He felt Cerrone was overreacting, blowing the whole thing out of proportion. In Nate's mind, Cerrone was just using the situation to make him look like the bad guy.
He just tried to be my friend, try to come up, and he's trying to push me in the bully's direction, making me the bad guy.
That tension led the UFC to book the two for a showdown at UFC 141 in December 2011. And by the time Fight Week arrived, the beef had reached its boiling point. Things got especially ugly at the press conference. During their face-off, Nate smacked Cerrone's signature cowboy hat clean off his head and gave him a shove. Cerrone just stared at him, seething, but you could tell this wasn't just a promotion. These two guys truly did not like each other. When they finally met in the cage in December 2011, you could feel the tension. No glove touch, no smiles, just two angry fighters ready to throw down.
Time you can touch gloves. Or not.
It got heated in between rounds too. At one point, Diaz gave Cerrone the double middle finger just to remind him who was in control. It wasn't just about winning. It felt like Diaz wanted to teach Cowboy a lesson, and he did. By the end of the fight, Diaz had landed over 230 strikes, a record for the division at the time.
Nate Diaz!
After the fight, the heat between them cooled down. Cerrone eventually approached Nate and Nick Diaz, offering respect and signaling that the feud was over. Surprisingly, the brothers accepted. The war was over, and both sides moved on. At number 4, we have Jorge Masvidal. The rivalry between Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal began in 2019 when Diaz, after defeating Anthony Pettis at UFC 241. In his post-fight speech, he alluded to being the BMF, baddest mother asterisker, and that he had the spiritual title. Diaz told Joe Rogan in his Octagon interview that he would like to defend it against Jorge Masvidal.
With this belt, I want to defend it against Jorge Masvidal. Had a good last fight.
UFC president and CEO DanaWhite decided to greenlight the belt being made. A major part was due to the crowd reaction and online reception to Diaz calling out his fellow gangster in Masvidal. Both were popular athletes at the time, so the UFC decided to cash in. The inaugural fight took place a few months later at UFC 244 in November 2019 in New York. Masvidal dominated the early rounds, opening a severe cut above Diaz's right eye.
Side position, isn't concerned with the crowd.
Despite Diaz's reputation for toughness and his insistence on continuing, the ringside doctor stopped the fight after the third round due to the severity of the cut, awarding Masvidal the victory by TKO. The decision was met with boos from the crowd, and both fighters expressed a desire for a rematch. After that night, both men went their separate ways. Diaz eventually fought out his UFC contract and left the promotion, while Masvidal went on to headline more cards, including 2 unsuccessful title shots, before eventually retiring from MMA in 2023. But the story wasn't over. In 2024, the rivalry sparked back to life, this time in the boxing ring. A professional boxing match was scheduled between the two for July, and the build-up quickly reignited the old flames. And as expected, the trash talk began.
Take it up with the fucking referee, stop the fight. Take it with the doctor, stop the fight. I'm doing my job, and that's to put as much hurting as I can on you.
I don't want to even box him. I want to fight him. I want to beat his ass in an MMA fight. That's my plan.
During one of the press conferences, chaos erupted as both fighters' camps got into a brawl. The brawl even continued right into the backstage area.
Let's go! Let's
Diaz went on to win this boxing match by majority decision, evening the score in their head-to-head encounters across different combat sports. Masvidal disputed the decision, suggesting the rivalry might not be entirely over, though Diaz seemed less interested in an immediate trilogy. As far as he was concerned, he had already proven what he needed to. Moving on to the third fighter that Nate Diaz hated the most, we have Dustin Poirier. In 2018, Diaz and Poirier were scheduled to co-main event UFC 230 at Madison Square Garden in New York City. This was a highly anticipated matchup. Diaz was returning after a 2-year layoff, and Poirier was a top lightweight contender on a serious winning streak. Fans were eager to see these two exciting and popular fighters go at it. Even Conor McGregor had this to say about the matchup.
Nate Diaz as tough as they come. Dustin Poirier came back and has showcased a good mental strength. I wish both men the best of luck.
However, the fight never happened. In October 2018, just weeks before the event, news broke that Poirier had to pull out due to a hip injury that required surgery. This was the official reason for the cancellation.
I got a lot of stuff going on with my hip. Really uncomfortable. My range of motion is messed up. You know what? We've got one doctor's opinion.
But, as is often the case in the fight game, there were other narratives and finger-pointing. Diaz, in his typical fashion, suggested that Poirier was never truly committed to the fight or that other factors were at play. Poirier, on the other hand, maintained the injury was legitimate and has since stated that Diaz himself had been difficult to deal with behind the scenes even before the injury, with some claims that Diaz had already withdrawn from the fight internally before Poirier's injury became public.
They wanted to switch it to 5 rounds. Nate was being hard to deal with, I believe. He kind of negotiated himself out of the main event spot. They offered us the main event. I accepted. Nate over-negotiated. We lost the main event.
Despite the cancellation, the idea of a Diaz-Poirier fight never really died. Over the following years, both fighters repeatedly took shots at each other on social media and in interviews. They would go back and forth, sometimes calling each other out, sometimes dismissing the other. Diaz even expressed his desire to fight Poirier in his last UFC fight.
I would like to fight Dustin Poirier, like now, like I've been trying to do, so if there's any mix-up.
However, the fight continually failed to materialize. Even with Diaz no longer in the UFC, the verbal jabs didn't entirely cease. They've occasionally commented on each other's career choices or potential opponents. As of now, with Diaz pursuing boxing and Poirier continuing his MMA career, the long-anticipated clash remains one of the most notable what-ifs in UFC history. Next, we turn to the second fighter Nate Diaz purportedly hated the most, Khabib Nurmagomedov. The most significant flashpoint in the feud between these two occurred in August 2015 at a World Series of Fighting (WSOF) event in Las Vegas. Both Diaz and Nurmagomedov were in attendance, Diaz to support his teammate Jake Shields and Khabib to corner his brother Abu Bakr Nurmagomedov and other Russian fighters. According to various accounts and footage that later surfaced, an altercation broke out between Nate Diaz and Khabib and their respective entourages. Nate Diaz's version of events, which he has recounted multiple times, is that Khabib and his group were trying to provoke him, taking pictures and making fun of him. Diaz claimed he confronted Khabib and slapped him in his face.
When I ran into him and his team at the World Series of Fighting, they were taking a group picture because I was standing there watching Jake, my friend, fight, and they took a picture with me behind him just to laugh at me, like make fun of me. And I'm watching my friend walk out, trying to watch his fight, and then he's like, ha, come on, man, and they're all laughing, like 12 Russian dudes.
That's what set it off.
Yeah, slapped him in his face.
Beyond this physical confrontation, Nate Diaz has consistently been dismissive of Khabib Nurmagomedov's fighting style and his reign as the UFC lightweight champion. Diaz has often criticized Khabib's grappling heavy approach as boring and has claimed that he himself was the true king of the lightweight division, having defeated top contenders and, in his view, Khabib in their street encounter.
He's just like, look at him, he ran off. He's a jock. It's not my style of fighting. I don't like it. He's not a real fighter. Him, DC, jockey attitude. I'm a real fighter.
Khabib, for his part, has also fired back over the years. He even stated on multiple occasions that the UFC had offered him a fight against Nate Diaz several times, but Diaz refused, allegedly not wanting to deal with Khabib grappling. The beef between these two nearly boiled over again in 2018 at UFC 239 during International Fight Week. Khabib and Nate were both in attendance, and when they crossed paths at T-Mobile Arena, it almost exploded again. Security quickly stepped in before things got physical, but the tension was real. Despite these confrontations, a sanctioned fight between Diaz and Khabib never materialized. Now, let's talk about the most hated fighter on Nate Diaz's list. That fighter is Conor McGregor. Back in early 2016, Conor McGregor was on top of the world, having just knocked out Jose Aldo in 13 seconds to become the featherweight champion. McGregor then decided to move up to lightweight to challenge Rafael dos Anjos for that title, aiming to become a two-division champion. However, just a couple of weeks before their scheduled fight at UFC 196 in March 2016, Dos Anjos pulled out due to a foot injury. The UFC was in a desperate scramble to find a replacement. Several names were thrown around, but it was Nate Diaz who stepped up on incredibly short notice, just 11 days. Diaz, known for his Stockton slap, his don't give a damn attitude, and his incredible cardio, was seen by many as a dangerous but perhaps unprepared opponent, especially as the fight was booked at welterweight because there wasn't enough time for a full weight cut for either fighter. The pre-fight press conferences were instant classics. McGregor, true to form, launched into his usual barrage of insults.
Yeah, I showed for hella years, before this guy even existed, so it ain't no thing, I don't give a fuck.
How's it feel to be a millionaire now? It's nice, right?
I'll tell you more.
You're a millie for one night only. He makes gun signs with the right hand and animal balloons with the left hand. So you're a credit to the community.
Fuck you. Fuck you now.
But Diaz, unlike many of McGregor's previous opponents, didn't just sit there and take it. He fired back with his own brand of laid-back, profane trash talk, famously accusing McGregor of being on steroids with the line, "Everybody's on steroids."
Everybody's on steroids. The whole UFC, everybody.
When they finally met in the octagon, the fight itself was shocking. McGregor started strong, landing heavy shots and bloodying Diaz in the first round. But Diaz, known for his durability, absorbed the punishment. In the second round, the tide began to turn. Diaz started landing his own crisp boxing combinations, and McGregor, who had expended a lot of energy, began to tire. Diaz, a skilled Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, easily took his back and sunk in a rear naked choke. McGregor tapped out, handing him his first UFC loss.
Oh, he's got the back now. That's it. He's got the chain. Oh, gentlemen, what?
Nate Diaz's post-fight interview became legendary. When Joe Rogan asked if he was surprised by the outcome, Diaz grabbed the microphone and delivered the iconic line.
How's that feel? Hey, I'm not surprised.
The upset sent shockwaves through the MMA world. McGregor, though humbled, demanded an immediate rematch. He became obsessed with avenging the loss. The second fight was set for UFC 202 in August 2016, again at welterweight. The buildup was even more intense than the first. The trash talk escalated, and things got ugly during one pre-fight press conference where Diaz and his camp walked out, leading to McGregor and Diaz throwing water bottles and energy drink cans at each other across the auditorium.
Get the fuck out of here! Fuck you!
Connor!
Their rematch was an absolute war and an instant classic. The highly anticipated rematch eventually took place at UFC 202 on August 20th, 2016. The fight was a grueling 5-round battle with both fighters showcasing incredible resilience. In the end, McGregor won by majority decision. 2 judges gave him the win, and 1 scored it a draw.
Somewhere around the 3rd round, towards the end of the 2nd round, Diaz started coming on strong.
For the winner by majority decision, the notorious McGregor!
The series was now tied 1-1. After that fight, everyone expected a trilogy, a 3rd and final fight to settle the score. But it never happened.